was one Christmas. So my mom lives in a little town called Cidra, which is up in the mountains. And we had our neighbor, it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe call it 100 feet up in a little mountain, but we can see their balcony, right? And they had this tradition at Christmas where they will get a pig and they will hang it from their little balcony down to the terrace. And, the matriarch will go with the knife and stab the pig, collect the blood, right? And
that's how you make the morcilla.
Yeah, they'll go through that process. And it was an all-day event, right? Where that family was super focused on their meal. And they were making morcilla and, festivities. And it's just stuff that you just don't see, right? And it's kind of like what anchors culture.
It has a lot of meaning.
Yeah, some of us try to keep it alive. So I've been doing this pig in Austin for many years.
Yeah.
And it was strange that this gentleman recognized me as the guy that always, worked with that, does the whole roasted pig in a party that we've been doing for years. And then so I think he asked me, how long ago? I said, I don't know. It's a long time ago. We have been doing this forever now. So
a couple things come to mind. One, I'm a little offended that I've known you for close to 15 years. I've never once been invited to
the roasting pig.
And two, you're not Freddy, the electrical engineer. You're not Freddy that works at Page. You're Freddy that roasts the pig in Austin. That's kind of
I know.
That's a big deal.
I was surprised myself. It's the first time something like this happened to me, but...
So we expect an invitation.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
You're welcome.
We know what we're doing next year. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's get going. I love that we're having this side banter and side discussion, which kind of brings us to why we were here. So all of us, a couple of weeks or months ago, maybe decided to form an organization. It's called Hola Data, and its mission is very simple. When you really think about where, from a population perspective and a demographic perspective, by 2060, it's expected that 1 in 4 Americans will be of Latino or Hispanic descent. And really, as we started to talk and learn about each other and kind of the struggles and the strengths in our experiences, we kind of came up with the mission of really wanting to provide a platform to make equal representation in the data center and digital infrastructure space. And so that's why we created Hola Data. I'm kind of curious to kind of go around the room and talk to everybody. As part of that, we've created the Lighthouse, which is a podcast that's going to provide a platform and a voice to some of our Hispanic and Latino leaders in the space to inspire, kind of give insights into what their stories have been. Because one of the things that really has allowed us to further these discussions is that some of these topics we've all struggled with or we've all have experienced. And for whatever reason, the Hispanic and Latino culture is a very proud culture. And some of these conversations are uncomfortable, and it takes vulnerability, and it takes willingness to kind of be open about some of our shared experiences to realize you're not alone. And so in that, there's power. And so because of that, we started this organization. But before we kind of really get into the pillars, the foundations, all the different things, I'd love to do an introduction. And so, Alex, are you comfortable walking us through who you are, your background, kind of how you got here, my friend?
Well, my name is Alejandro Cantú. I'm originally from Monterrey, Mexico, living in the United States for 12 plus years. My career started with generation, and I kind of moved up and down the one-line diagram. But when I started that, the data center industry in Mexico was non-existent. But I knew that it was there, and got to know the industry a little bit better because of companies I used to work for. And then moving to the States, I really got to see what was going on with the mission critical side. And it was overwhelming from my part, coming from Mexico, Latin American projects. Seeing the scale of build in the United States was completely overwhelming. So I went back with a message and then moved in the industry, the distribution products, working for manufacturing facilities, and then integrating complete projects, company called EOS Power Technologies that we work with the big CSPs and colo guys. And after that, we tilted up a data center company that has Mexican and U.S. capital. So that's super interesting, and we have people involved from both sides of the border, which is very exciting because I don't think we have that at this point. I'm the chief operating officer for that company, but I do a little bit of everything. So I'm really happy to be part of Hola Data, and it's exciting times. Exciting times.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Alex. Curious question. Are you from Monterrey or Monterrey? I'm kind of curious to see where
Monterrey, Nuevo León.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, that's where the Big Bang actually occurred. So
that's where it started. It all started there.
Everything started there,
okay.
With a carne asada, of course.
Mr. Jose, why don't you tell us about yourself, my man?
Oh boy. Well, my name is Jose Ruiz from San Juan, Puerto Rico. I left the island to go to college and studied biomechanical engineering, and I've never practiced that a single day in my life. I actually got my first career in the Navy, and after 11 and a half years, I decided to move on into the corporate world. At the time, it was an interesting transition right from the military. My first job out of the military, I'll confess, it was in the insurance business. I went through an officer recruiting firm, and the job that I selected was working for Travelers Insurance. And I can't really remember what I did or what was the job for, but all I remember is that I lasted 3 months. And in those 3 months, I was very blessed that Travelers actually did a great job in saying, hey, insurance is not for everyone. Go ahead and try to find your next opportunity. And I stumbled upon an opportunity as a sales engineer for Digital Realty Trust. And I was like, well, I like technology, and I need a job. And this job was in Dallas. And my wife and I were trying to make our way to be near family after that Navy transition. And it was one of those things where that needed to be the job. And it actually worked out. I interviewed for the job, and the electrical one line of a data center is very similar to an electrical one line of an airplane. So because I knew how to navigate those one lines, I was able to actually get the job. And I accepted the offer driving to Dallas, not knowing that I was going to get the job. So it was kind of fun. And from then, I owe a lot of my career to the mentors that I've had, and we'll talk a little bit more about mentoring here. But Digital Realty was a great company that taught me a lot of what I know today. Followed by Compass Data Centers, and building that. That was a great entrepreneur experience with Chris Crosby and Chris Curtis. And then after that, I went on to help build the hyperscale organization for Equinix called xScale. And that was probably my first big experience with CSPs and hyperscalers at a global scale, which it provided me lots of insights and just a lot of learnings, right, and how this world really works. And right now, I'm leading the global accounts and platform strategy for Stream data centers, and loving every single minute of it. And super excited to be alongside everybody here at Hola Data, because I feel like there's a lot of value that we can provide as leaders in our industry to bring on a new generation that will create value and add to everybody's lives.
Thank you very much, Jose. Mr. Freddy, why don't you walk us through do a quick intro of yourself, my friend?
So I'm Freddy Padilla. I'm with Page, Soren Page. We call it Page short. I've been in the design industry all my career. I was lucky enough to go, born and raised in Puerto Rico. Also from Puerto Rico, a small little town, Naranjito, in the mountains. I I think the difference is I stay in the island. I went to college in the island. I went to what people call the room, which is Recinto Universitario de Mayagüez. So that was my path. After I graduated there, I moved to Austin with my wife. We started our life in Austin. I guess from there, I went to school. Puerto Rico, the university is very interesting because they teach you power. So I actually studied what I did. And when I started working, when I saw my first one line, was in school. So I actually was pretty excited about one lines. One line was my thing. I love one lines. So that was my thing. Everybody mentioned one lines. I said, well, how can I not mention one line? One line is in my life. That's the reason I'm here, because that's my thing. So yes, I started working with one lines. So since the beginning, then I started working in Austin, and then I found my way back to Puerto Rico. I did a little bit of construction management / design down there for the pharmaceutical industry. My wife and I looking for closer to be closer to the family. Then we came back to Austin. Then is where I joined Page. Before that I did telecom buildings. They were not quite data centers. They were a little more simple. DC and AC, one generator, nothing too big. Then I found my way to data centers. They were one line oriented, a lot of one lines and very complex one lines back in the day. These days, I think the one lines have gone through phases. They're more simple, like they used to be. But back in the day when I started, man, they were complex, and I love that piece of it. So I think I met. In my first data center, I got the opportunity to work with Alfonso. That was my first data center that I was designing, and I think that was Alfonso's first data center too that he was working. So we managed to work in the same data center that started all for us, I guess. And a lot of people started on that data center that I know. It was one of those jobs that started a lot of people on this industry. Sometimes you get across one of those. So that's how I landed into this market. I continue working and striving on that market and continue, providing services inside that market. That has been great to me. Why did I want to become part of Hola Data? I think, I always like to help. Most of my services, to the community have been through community college, and mostly in my hometown, in my area, with my family. And it was time for me to pay forward outside that group. So when the opportunity presented itself, I said, wow, I think this is great. This is something that resonates with me, and it's something that I see myself doing. So it was at the right time, at the right moment, and I decided to accept the challenge. And that's how I'm here.
And before we started the podcast, we just learned that he is a fantastic lechon asado chef.
Yes.
Right. So we are invited, right? Next
party,
year to his lechon asado party.
And the audience is also invited. So
everybody,
we're gonna send some
2024 in Austin.
2024.
You know what's interesting?
Austin.
We learned yesterday night, Jose, that Freddy in college was a DJ. Freddie DJ.
Wow.
And so I am expecting a party with lechon asado, some DJing going on. So this is going to be a big party, Freddy.
I love it.
Rene, if you're listening, remember it's in your house.
All right, so
Alfonso, how about you? Thank you for hosting, but we want to hear your story.
So I will be quick. My name's Alfonso Portillo. Originally was born in Chihuahua. Grew up in El Paso. Went to school at Tech. Got my electrical engineering degree. But it's interesting, I share this only because it's important to kind of what we're trying to do with all the data. When I was growing up, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I grew up in I would call it. We had everything we needed, not everything we wanted, but it definitely was a community that didn't have a ton of resources, and so for me, I knew I wanted a profession. I knew I wanted some kind of career. I knew I wanted to make money, and more than what we were making at the time as kids and my family, and I wanted to provide for what would be my family one day. So I literally Googled highest paying jobs out of college. And at the time, it was intellectual property lawyer. I'm like, I don't know what this is. Sure, let's do it. And so I knew at the time, by doing the research with good old Google, is that you needed to have an engineering degree. So I looked, when I was looking for colleges, I applied and I went engineering undecided and said, hey, whoever gives me the best offer or opportunity, that's what I'm going to do. And it was electrical engineering. And so that's why I chose that. It's not because I knew or wanted to do it. It's for me, I figured I was going to end up in law school and be a lawyer. I ended up finishing undergrad in electrical, started law school in San Antonio in St. Mary's, and realized that I hated it. Like, it was not engineering school and law school was two very different places. And that was like the first time where I've quit something. Like, I kind of walked away from something and didn't finish it. For me, that was kind of like a really big deal. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to walk away from law school, I need to figure out what I'm going to do with life. And one of the companies that I had interviewed with during college, and for me, it was just experience getting interviews, like going to the job fair and just like seeing how it goes, just to get that under my belt with zero expectation to actually work. 'Cause I knew I was going to law school. But one of the companies that I had done really well with in the interviews and actually really liked was a company called Constructors. Now they're called Structure Tone. But they were hiring in San Antonio. They had given me an offer that I turned down because I had gone to law school. I remember I called them back and I was kind of like, hey, remember that offer that you gave me back then? Is it still good? And they said, yeah, well, we can honor it. So I accepted the offer and left law school and got into construction. And at the time, kind of being in the right place in the right time, they were building data centers. And they were starting to hire electrical and mechanical engineering students with the kind of the thought process of, we'll teach you construction. You at least have the technical training, which back then was a foreign concept. Like, that was not very many companies were doing that. And so the first project I ever built was for Lowe's. It was a hardware store in San Antonio, right off of Rogers Run. And so that was my first project, was a data center. I don't think I knew what I was doing the whole time I was there. I was kind of just doing odd jobs for people. The first real project where I kind of had some responsibility was the Kansas City project that Freddy was on. And for me, that was a fantastic job. I think it really plateaued me into my career, introduced me kind of going into the conversation that we'll probably have today is this business is 80% people, 20% like what we do. And the networks and the relationships that were built in Kansas City have lasted a lifetime. And
for all of us.
For all of us. Like, because kind of pay it forward. Our owner's rep at the time was a gentleman named Joe Baldwin. We were building for Bank of America. I was on the general contractor, so he was on the engineering side and Joel was on the owner side. Well, as the job was wrapping up, I remember Joel pulled me aside and was like, hey, he was moving to Texas. He was going to be taking a promotion and was starting to build his team and wanted me to join him. At the time, I was 24, 25 years old, maybe. He wanted me to be one of his PMs for a pretty large data center project in Plano. And there was no way I was ready for that position. But it kind of goes back into, like, when you see something in somebody, you're willing to take a chance. And for me, like, people have asked you, like, who has been that person? For me, it's Joel. So if you're listening, Joel, thank you. Like, he gave me an opportunity and afforded me a position that I was not ready for. But I took it. And so I moved to Plano, joined Bank of America. And, like, for me, that was like, I knew while I wasn't ready, the only thing I could do is work as hard as I could. And so, like, for me, I worked like I lived at the site. Like, that was my thing. But Freddy was the engineer. So he followed suit. So he was also working with Paige. And so there were so many comfort areas. Now it's my second job. And so now it's like, okay, I learned a lot. Now apply it. And you kind of start to rely on that team. That team that was then created at that second job, we're 20 years later, we're like family now still. So anyways, I spent time with Bank of America, did that, moved to the operations side for a while. I spent time on the operations side with Bank of America and then joined Google in 2013. Spent about 10 years at Google building data centers in Oklahoma and Texas. And then joined Yonder for about a year. So I left Google, wanted to get a little bit of experience on the colo private side. And for me, that was eye-opening. It was really, really refreshing to see the business side of it, understand just this concept. And it's a common practice now, but this concept that the data center market and that industry is no different than the real estate game. It's really, at the end of the day, when you look at a big picture perspective, it really is just a real estate play with a different type of service that you provide. So being able to get exposure to that and understand the financial side of what I had been doing for so long on the development side was just instrumental for me. I got the opportunity to go back to Google. Again, the relationships and the people that you meet, they become like family. To go back and help them lead their ML and AI infrastructure kind of pivot and change globally. And so I joined Google again in June. So it's been almost 6 months since I've been back.
That's a pretty big deal.
I'm excited to be back. And so we started this. And so this was interesting enough. I've been wanting to get the Lighthouse going for 2.5 years. And we'll kind of get into in here in a little bit when we have our next group members, kind of how this started. But it really was to try to provide a platform and an audience for people. And so thank you very much for introducing yourselves and getting us here. You know, I'd like to shift and pivot a little bit and just ask the question to y'all, like, why is this important? Like, I think, Freddy, you mentioned for you, it was, you were ready to give back and you were ready to kind of, but I'd love to hear the why specifically from you, Alejandro and Jose, around why is this important to you? Like, why does this resonate more than, I'm sure you've been offered or kind of contemplated joining multiple organizations. Why this one? Why now?
I guess things happen for a reason, right? Things happen for a reason. It felt right. I've seen so many talent out there, not only within the United States, but also in Mexico and Latin America, that I think people should know about. And as I went through a lot of challenges during my career, if I would have had somewhere or someone who can guide me that belonged to my same cultural group, it would have been easier for me and faster. So data centers are, co-locations are, how fast can you build, right? How fast can we grow? And if we can share that with the industry and with Latin America itself, I think we can grow as an ecosystem, but not only the Latin and Hispanic community, but the industry in general, because there's a lot of talent out there. And I see people not living to their expectations. In Mexico, you have to work very hard to grow and get to a better place economically, professionally. But here in the States, it's interesting. Once I moved to the States, it's up to you, to me. You can be whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can grow as fast as you want. And I guess that message would love to convey to the Latin and Hispanic community, so they understand that they can grow as much as they want. And the data center industry, it's a nonstop industry. It's bulletproof. Nobody really knows it. And you said something very important, Jose. Our culture is very resilient. We love to work. We love to do things together. And now, in combination with process and experience from the U.S. folks, from the United States, that's a killer combination. And again, it's why I always say the true meaning of the North meets the South.
Well, so I'm kind of curious to kind of dig into a little bit into your why and what's driving you to do this.
That was a hard to follow why. But, I am a huge fan of leadership and personal growth. And I feel like this is a fantastic opportunity to give that, right, to folks that don't know the industry or are in the industry, or trying to figure out how they can grow and how can they really create some impact. I have really never been a part of a Hispanic Latino centered group per se. What you said earlier, right? We've been part of organizations as an industry as a whole, trying to, further a type of movement, whether it's, green energy, data center efficiency, a lot of technical elements. But I'm energized to hear everybody's stories and to really provide that for the, Hispanic and Latino community. Growing up, I took buildings for granted. Right. I think many of us do. Right. It really wasn't until I toured a data center, right, that I truly had a good picture of all the work and effort and engineering and all the skill that's required to build just the building, right? A data center, take that to another level, right? So, being able to share, my learnings and my mistakes, right, and how I learned from them, and the opportunities to connect with people, to share a common goal. That's huge for me, right? So that's my why.
Mr. Freddy, I kind of want to just, I know you mentioned a little bit about timing wise, but I'm kind of curious for you to expand a little bit more on your why and kind of why is this important to you?
I think sometime in life, timing is important. I start with timing, I guess. I found myself in a position where my two kids go out for college. So I found myself with a different outlook in life, letting them go, watching them grow, trying to think to myself, wow, how can I contribute? And sometimes life just treats you like this. I receive a text from Alfonso saying, Freddy, are you interested? Well, yeah, I do actually. This is something that will work for me. That is something that I think I will like and enjoy to do with my life. That it could be something great. And I'm always being a person that like to connect with people and like to create impact. And always that fills me and made me feel happy, I guess. Because of that, helping others is always being a thing. In my office, seeing how my guys grow and how they achieve their goals and how better they get with time is one of the things that make me the happiest, So I figured, why I cannot just do that outside the office also? So when this opportunity presented for me to be able to help others and for me to have that kind of enjoyment, I said, wow, this is kind of came from nowhere, but it was what I needed, I guess, at the time. So it's been great for me.
I appreciate that, Freddy. If I were to kind of sit about what are the things that are pushing me to do this and kind of what even was that kind of genesis of a thought. And it was really making people aware that this industry even exists. Like I partner a lot with my fraternity in college and the students that are there. And I ask them like, hey, what do you want to do? What are you studying? I don't think I've had a single time, one person since I've been out close to 20 years for them to say, oh, I want to get into the data center or the digital infrastructure space. It hasn't been an answer once.
Because they don't know. Yeah.
They don't know it exists. And then I think about the labor shortage that we know exists. You said it, like how protected maybe this industry is. You used the word bulletproof, but it's very robust industry and it's very safe. It's growing. We have a labor shortage. And it's very well compensated when you look at what we do and how we get paid. And I mean, for me, being able to touch and see what it is that we do at the end of a job is so satisfying that I almost want a platform to kind of share. Like I want to scream from the mountaintops, like y'all need to come into this industry because you're going to make great money. You're going to have a ton of fun and it's pretty safe. And so for me, it's to provide that platform and to bring that next generation in. And then if I can pay it forward along the way, be a mentor to anybody that would want mentorship, like why not, man?
Absolutely.
So, I want to get into Hola Data a little bit and kind of get into some of the different topics and pillars. You mentioned we have 3 pillars, and so I kind of want to start with the first one when it comes to mentorship. Jose, do you want to give us a little bit of kind of like what you see Hola Data doing in terms of mentorship and kind of what we're looking to do there?
Yeah. So, mentorship, I'm a firm believer that is one of the catalyst for success for people. And mentorship can take form in many ways, right? You can have your colleague, right, as a mentor. You can have someone that's perhaps your manager, or 2 steps up, right, for that matter. My experience was a very blessed experience. I've had many opportunities, and all of them are 100% thanks to my mentors. And I feel like if an individual that is starting to learn the industry and wants to really add impact and value, then being able to pair them up with a mentor that's already creating that value in the industry would be huge, right? Is thinking, hey, Paige, or hey, Google, how can I add value, right? From that first step out of college, right? I think that would be very significant for these companies. And mentorship is it's kind of like that conduit, right? That allows intentional feedback, intentional conversations, and intentional networking that will open up a ton of opportunity for folks that don't know the industry. They want to get in, they want to create impact and grow.
Fantastic. I'm curious, you hit on a few topics there. What do you envision Ola doing, both in terms of for the mentee and for the mentors that are going to be joining our organization?
Yeah, no, great question. So we're all thinking about what is the mechanism, but at a high level, we do envision a mentorship program where we'll have experts in the industry paired up with mentees and be intentional about the interaction, right? So whether we're not 100% sure what the cadence will be, but perhaps it's either biweekly, monthly, or quarterly. That is still to be determined, but intentional interaction between the mentor and the mentee would be part of the program, right? And what's interesting is that we could be that sounding board and gauge how we can pair them with the right mentor, right? Because that's another thing. If we see a strength in one individual, well, we want to pair that strength with that mentor that's actually doing the work today, so that they can amplify that value.
It's interesting you say that, Jose, and I kind of want to. For the longest, the first 10 years at Google, I was so focused on just internal, and when I started to kind of branch out, and you start to realize there's a lot of Hispanics in the space. They're just spread out across all these different companies. And when you start to realize how many similarities, and so like there's opportunities to meet and ask for mentorship, it may not necessarily be within your own company, but the network as a whole starts to bring a lot of value. Because there's people out there that probably have gone through exactly whatever challenge or struggle that you're working through. They can provide a lot of context, because I think a lot of times, I know I've been there, where it's just like there's probably nobody that understands the situation that I'm in today. Like they don't understand me. Somebody I guarantee you does. It's just being able to find that person that can relate to where you're in. So I think that's super powerful.
Yeah, and if you want to, quantify in time, like I'm always thinking, okay, well, who can I choose as a mentor, right? That's 10 years older than me, right? That has a decade of experience ahead of me, that can guide me, right, through some of the issues that perhaps are not the problems of today, because the problems of yesterday have been solved, right? So it's just a different perspective, a different outlook, and ways to solve issues that perhaps allows that individual to succeed, right? And maybe that's the catalyst for the next promotion or the next opportunity at a different company. You're never going to know until you actually have those intentional conversations.
And I love that you use the word intentionality. Yesterday we were having a conversation, Anthony and I were walking home from dinner, and he kind of made the comment, and it resonated with me when he said, and the majority of all of his mentorships were unofficial. And so they never had the discussion, hey, Jose, will you be my mentor? I'm curious to engage in this mentorship. It was just, the person may not even know that he saw them as a mentor. They have been. And so being intentional for us, providing that platform is we're going to be one of our key pillars, right?
Yes. No, absolutely. I think, when we think about intentionality, a lot of things could come into mind, but purpose is one of them, right? I think ownership is another one. And we're going to be very intentional about selecting and pairing, right, those mentee relationships, because it matters, right? And I think collectively, the experiences that the board has will be a strong influence for that.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Jose, I'm kind of curious to pivot a little bit. One of our second pillars is education. And so I know we're looking to really partner and do a lot in that space. So Freddy, I'm kind of curious if you can walk us through kind of what you're thinking when it comes to education. How does it partner with OlaData, and what are the things we're looking to do in that space?
So one of the challenges, a lot of people go to school when they're in high school or when they're in college. They don't know what they want, or they don't have the right tools. Sometimes even have enough funding to be able to pursue what they want to do. Some people sometimes, at the high school, I'm going to start with the high school level. Some people at the high school level might not pursue a career because they think they cannot afford it, or because they don't see how they're going to be able to get from point A to point B, meaning getting to college and then graduate. So part of the idea is to establish a system or a program that will help these kids to move from high school to a degree that can be used on the data center industry. So people can be able to reflect to that. Also, when it comes to college, when you go to college, you try to, you go there, you get a job. Sometimes you start you start with one idea that you want to be a lawyer, and you don't know that you might want to be a data center person or a person that work in our field. Make sure that we provide that knowledge of what we do, so many people know in college that this is a great career and it's very rewarding. And like Alfonso said, there is great money behind it. So if you choose this career, there is a lot. And we want Hispanic people to do that because we feel that our representation in the industry is not in line with the amount of Hispanics that we have in this country. So we want it, a part of our goal is to increase our representation in the sector. So that's another way, and there is also the people that are in the trades working on the data center, and they need to get certified and they need tools so they can improve their lives. So many Hispanics need this, and we're going to try to work with them to come to us so we can provide tools and training for them to take so they can improve their life and they can take advantage of what we provide, so they can also grow and represent us at the leadership level, because we not only want to be part of the industry, having the numbers, we also want to make sure that we keep it in the leadership level. I think another thing that we're really interested on this, we want to make sure that we got equal representation. We want women, we want males. We want to make sure that representation is equal. So I think that's where we are.
One of the things that I love about the education piece is the opportunity to really highlight the multiple disciplines that it takes to, build a data center, for example, right? A lot of people just, think about electrical engineering, right? And we can put that in a box, and if it stays in that box and you really don't know how it ties to a data center, you just stay in that box, right? You go into power infrastructure and whatnot. But, to your point, Alfonso, the fact that folks really don't know that there's this data center industry as a whole out there, it's a big problem, right? And that problem translates into an opportunity, which is what we're trying to fill.
It's interesting, Jose, you say that, and it reminds me of the session we were recording earlier with Noemi, who those that are listening will get a chance to meet her here in a little bit. I was having a conversation with some of the students in my fraternity that are at Tech today, and one of the students is a business major, and you can tell he was losing a little bit of interest. And I was like, "Hey, are you? What do you think? Or is this a space that you're interested in?" And he kind of made the comment. He's like, "Yeah, but I don't see the connection between, like, I see the mechanical engineering guy, and I see there's a construction science major." He's like, "But I'm a business guy. Like that. I'm learning business." And I kind of just laughed. Like, you know what's funny? Like, the people that have the most fun and the people that get to do all the deals are the business people that are in the data center space. And so actually, like, not only will you do well, you actually will have a very coveted position among the data center space, because they're the ones that have the most fun. So we say. I'm sure they work extremely hard, but so yeah, 100%. Like, it's that knowledge of what can you do in our space. You didn't touch on this, Freddy, but I want to kind of just highlight. Obviously, Hola Data will have the traditional scholarship opportunities and the traditional. But I think it's important to highlight some of the things we want to try to do differently. Mm-hmm. We're looking to do a sponsorship where we sponsor a student from high school and really focus on some of the fundamentals that are above and beyond education, etiquette training, financial credit literacy. And so some of these life lessons that, depending on the person's upbringing or background, they'll learn the hard way. They'll learn it like most of us learned it, which is trial and error. And so we really wanted to try to do things slightly different to really 360-degree support these individuals that we're going to partner with. And so bring a lot there. Anything to add there on the educational side?
Doing things different will help us really build something that will last. Scholarships and other tools that we will place out there will certainly help us, get the message out there in terms of education. It's very important to mention that if we don't break the rules at this point, we're going to be one more association out there. Everything that we do in terms of education will give the opportunity to the Latin and Hispanic community really understand what's out there and how can they have access to information, which is very important. But certainly there's going to be a lot of available tools for education, web as well, resources. We will work with manufacturers to create certain levels of certifications. So not only college, right, but also we're going to get into the technical side. Some people just don't blend well with college, but they're super bright people. And how can we give access to those guys and to those folks to learn and to explore what they like? You said it perfectly. You wanted to be a lawyer, right? And then you ended up being an engineer.
Yeah.
And it resonated with me because that was my case as well. It's a place, it's a platform, it's a safe spot where the community will be able to access education tools, and also how can we help them financially speaking. So there's a lot of things that are going to come up with education, a lot of very innovative things. So more to come on that.
Alejandro, you hit on the third pillar, which is really opportunities and job placement. And so I'm kind of curious to have yourself or anybody kind of expand on how do you see OlaData really partnering with our sponsor companies or companies that are going to join OlaData, and even some current employees or professionals that are looking for different opportunities. How do you see that third pillar really tying into the market?
So we have mentorship, we have education. Now we're creating something, right? But how are we going to help those individuals now enter the market? Job fairs, job placement, develop plans with universities on how they can grow and get themselves into a place where they can be not useful would not be the word, but they can be certified for certain positions in the industry. Corporate outreach, working with the big names, right? We have big names here. How can we house all this information in a platform where somebody that wants to enter the industry can find a job? We can match that up with their qualifications combined with educations. Those search terms could be used as well to find the perfect job for the perfect individual. Also, there's a very touchy subject, right, that we will include with the opportunity side: immigration resources. How can we help not only the U.S. folks migrate to North and South America, Central and South America, but also how can we find more resources down in that geography and can come here to the United States with a process that can be manageable, understandable. As some corporate lawyers, sometimes, they're not super familiarized and they tend not to look for resources outside. But we plan to look for partnerships with legal firms that have experience and And again, it goes both ways. It goes from the United States down south and down south here to United States.
What's interesting, I like this resonated with earlier podcasts that we were talking about on that topic, providing a platform for the professionals that are in the space to have somebody to ask a question. Yeah. Maybe they're going through an experience where they may not have somebody in their immediate circle that has been through it. But as they lean on to the wider network circle, it provides them somebody that maybe has gone through it before, maybe has lived through it and can give them some advice. And so, because some of these topics are very touchy, they're vulnerable topics, and I appreciate you sharing with that. Jose, you were going to mention something. Go ahead.
Well, I was listening to all of you, and I couldn't help to think how all of our pillars cross-pollinate with one another. Right. And when you were talking about education, I was thinking, well, yes, we're targeting an individual perhaps, but also we need to work on creating awareness at an institution level, right? We talked about the companies, but what about the institutions that actually create the professional, right? These universities, these technical colleges, right? So I think, there's a lot of opportunity to partner with these universities, right? To raise awareness for what it is, the data center industry, and how their degrees create an impact to the industry.
Yeah, and I think David and I were talking about opportunities. We many times there is all this conference, and then sometimes our the person that is working on the field or is kind of related to the data center world, or just the young people that are not, they don't have the connections, they don't even know some of these conferences even exist. Providing a channel for them to go and participate and maybe help explain the booths of the conference and how the conference work. So give an opportunity that they didn't have, things that they have never experienced. What for us at the stage of our careers, we see a conference, we kind of understand how it works. You think about it, for somebody new in the industry,
they don't even know how to go around.
They don't even know how to go around. So take a group, maybe take it to the conference, showing how the conference is, and teach them that. That was something that, David and I were just talking about. I thought it was a great idea, something to create opportunities, because you show them the environment and then you teach them. So there is a lot of things that are our data center industry or mission critical industry cover, and I think this is one of it. And I think at the beginning you're not that exposed to that. It takes some time for you to get exposed. So trying to get a little bit our people an early exposure, I think is a great tool.
Yeah, I saw that happening quite recently at the Data Club conference that happened here in Austin a couple of months ago. There was a group of students that were invited from the University of Texas in Arlington, specifically the mechanical engineering program. And I ran into that crowd walking up the stairs at the hotel. And, I stopped and introduced myself and created a connection with them. And I just started asking, hey, okay, so how do you see yourself applying into the industry? And, they were all techies, right? So they're all engineering. And I'm like, but what about sales? Going back to your point. And they're like, oh, no, not sales, technical. We want to be technical. But it goes to show that there's an incredible opportunity, right, to reach that generation, get them involved in these conferences, get them exposed to all the different, positions and opportunities that it can offer at that level. And that's impactful, right? Because now they're creating, data points for big decisions. And if we really want to talk about the decision making, right, of one's life, there's really not a whole lot of big decisions that one makes. Probably we can count them in our hands, right? What school do you want to go to? What's your first job? Getting married. Those are big decisions. And if we can capture and raise awareness at that level, then we can truly impact their life.
I'm sure we'll hear more about David on that, but I think he's got an amazing insight regarding that. I don't think when he started, he was thinking he was going to be doing data centers and in the mission critical market sector. I think he was moving from different places and landing into these. Somebody would help him at the beginning, having a little bit of an earlier start. I think it would have been nice. I think sure he'll share his story on this, but I'm sure that's something that I thought it was always really cool. I think having all these different point of views that we have in our group, I think is interesting. You know, everybody have a different angle.
And I think it's a one-stop shop for people to understand our industry in the three pillars. It's incredible, but understanding the industry, there's so many verticals inside a data center, outside a data center, starting from finance, business, engineering, mechanical, electrical, real estate, legal. So it's a world by itself, but people don't really know exactly where to land, right? People think about data centers as a technology business. It is, but it's not.
Yeah, even in the investment side, right? So now that the data center industry is no longer flying under the radar, and we have big capital partners coming into the industry, they're getting more sophisticated. They need data center expertise, so they're hiring data center experts to come alongside their team to really provide that
100%,
lens.
100%. Freddy, you mentioned I think we were talking a little bit about being different and providing those opportunities, and I mentioned the one thing that resonates that hasn't come up yet is some of the students and some of the people that we're planning to partner with. I think it was you, Alex, that wanted to bring them into our board meetings. And so, have it to where our scholarship recipients are able to join our board meetings and kind of be able to get exposure to how a 503c operates. Mm-hmm. What are the things that we do? How does this actually come together to be able to have that visibility at that place in your life to then carry that with you in your professional life is instrumental.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and again, speed to market.
Yeah.
How fast can we prepare the new generations to take over when we exit the market, right? It's just amazing how if we share a little bit more, it's something that will help a lot of people, and the growth is going to be exponential. Because in my case, my kids, right? And I use them as an example because I've been in the industry for a long time, and they didn't want to go into the industry. This is a whole conversation by itself, but by an opportunity, one of my kids got into the industry, right? He was hired in a temp job, and after that, he said, "This is wonderful." And then he got my other kid down in the industry as well, and friends and people that didn't even think that there was something going on in the digital infrastructure, data centers. So the growth is going to be exponential. As long as we start hitting the right people, they're going to go back to their friends, they're going to go back to their families and say, "Hey guys, this is big, this is fun, this is an industry that'll keep on growing," right? And now kids that are gaming and using their phones for everything, they get to see exactly where everything's born and how everything's moving along and how technology works. It's incredible.
Just looking at time and making sure we can get time, we'll recap this portion of the discussion with a question for the three of you. You have an audience, and we're trying to encourage people to join Hola Data, whether you're coming in as a sponsor company, whether you're coming in as an individual. What's your call to action? Like, what's your pitch line, if you will, to attract people to join? Because I'd love to be able to get that on film. So kind of give me your best elevator speech to why they should join Hola Data.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the team has done a great job in explaining the why, but it's pretty obvious that this doesn't happen without support, right? So we do need financial support. We do need membership support. We need a strong community that is intentional about the efforts that we're putting set forth, so that this organization outlives us. Right. That's really the intent in my mind, is making sure that we build a strong foundation that will help the next generation of Hispanic and Latinos in this industry to grow. Right. So, yes, we are going to be doing some fundraising events. They're going to be fun. Right, with the purpose of funding, scholarships and mentorship efforts and opportunities for folks. And I'm looking forward to connecting with my network to start that effort as well.
Yeah, I guess for me is make sure, I think, that we pay forward, help us to help others, and join us in this in this quest of trying to improve and increase the numbers for our Latin community in the mission critical sector. Help us do that.
Every dollar that is going to be invested in this association will actually go back. And it's for the betterment of not only the Hispanic and Latino community, but also for the data center industry. So every dollar that we can capture will go back to somebody and will help us grow and also take care of problems that we have not been addressing or challenges we have not been addressing for some time now. So whatever we put in, definitely somebody's gonna see the benefits. We're gonna see something coming back with interest. So
interesting, Alex, and I'll ask this question to wrap up this portion of it. What if some audience members are out there today and they're like, hey, I don't necessarily identify as Latino or Hispanic. Can I join OlaData?
Absolutely.
How would you answer to that question?
Absolutely. No. We all have relationships. We all want to learn of each other. So OlaData is a bridge to gap understanding of our culture, of our community, and how can we better integrate the industry leaders with the Latin and Hispanic leaders as well.
Yeah. But it's not limited to that, right? I can attest that in my experience, none of my mentors were Hispanic and Latinos, right? So we want to encourage and highlight the fact that anybody that wants to provide value to the next generation of Hispanic and Latino workers is welcomed, right? It doesn't matter where you're from, what position you're in. We just want intentional impact to this community.
Yeah. If you feel connected to the Latin American people, you're welcome to join. It's as simple as that.
And obviously, you're invited to next year's Lechon Asado party
in Austin,
Texas.
With DJ Freddy.
Yeah, that's right.
No, okay. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll take a pause here and we'll come back for part 2 for the other half of our founders. But thank you for taking the time and talking to us. Any parting words?
Thank you.
Thank you, Alfonso.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We're in part 2 of our intro to OlaData. We have the other half of our founding members. And so I do want to do a little bit of an introduction to everybody. And so why don't we start with you, Anthony, and kind of walk us through who you are and kind of what your story is.
Yeah, so a little about me right away. My name is Anthony Garcia, currently the president of the hyperscale division for Overwatch Mission Critical. I've mostly spent all of my life in Texas. I was actually born in a small town in northern Florida, Clearmont, Florida. It's where my grandparents were from. My mother was adopted in Mexico by missionaries, and my grandparents were from northern Florida. So I got to Texas as fast as I could. I was about 10 months old, and I've spent most of my time in Houston. And then early on, around first grade, I moved to Hebronville, Texas. I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with South Texas, but it's about a town of 3,000. It's about 42 miles from the border. And that's where my family has lived for hundreds of years, apparently. And they've always been ranchers, cattle and horses. So I grew up on a ranch out there, spent most of my time doing ranch things. I thought that was the neatest thing in the world, running cattle. Didn't ever imagine being in a larger city, but then luckily, somehow, I ended up in Germany at 13 or 12, in Heidelberg, Germany. And that was my first time really outside of the U.S. Mexico didn't feel like something different. It just felt like that's where my grandma lived. But traveling to Germany was like an eye-opening experience in that, people had different color hair. They had blonde hair over there, and they had blue eyes, and they didn't speak the languages I knew. And that was the start of knowing that I would not live my life in South Texas. I liked the ranch. I liked that whole experience. But once I traveled to Germany, it was like, there's a whole wide world out there. And I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know how I'm going to be back, but I know that I'm not going to exist in this small town for the rest of my life. Moved around, went to Corpus Christi, moved to Houston, and then moved to San Antonio in 2005. And that was the start of life for me, I'd say. I joined the military in 2006 out of San Antonio, went to college at University of Texas, San Antonio. And I majored in economics, and I did something similar as you in that I went to yahoo.com. I didn't go to google.com, and I searched what's the best degree to get. And I something along that search, and econ came up, and I was like, well, math, that makes sense. I'll do this. I can't say I've ever done anything other than listen to the Freakonomics radio podcast that's related to econ. From there, I joined the Army and commissioned as a second lieutenant, and I wanted to be an infantry officer. So I went infantry, which is even less to do with econ, and got a chance to travel around the world. Lived in Georgia and Hawaii and California, briefly in Afghanistan, and then came back and lived in El Paso. And in El Paso is where I left the military in July 7th, 2014. And I spent a number of years trying to figure out what I was going to do. But I was convinced that the right sector for me was oil and gas. Oil and gas, oil and gas. That's where the opportunity is. That's where, everything is going to be. And after getting my first job offer from Halliburton for $17 an hour to work 7 days on, 3 days off as a field logistics coordinator, I decided that maybe oil and gas wasn't going to be for me. And I went back to college. This is after the Army. And coincidentally, I found my way into the data center industry, working for Google Fiber initially, and then moving on to build for other groups. And then I got a chance to join Oracle Cloud when it just got started for 3 years. And that brought me to where I'm at now, which is a small business owner. And that's a little bit about me. And I think I've taken you 39 years into the past and back.
Quick shout out to El Paso. So that's where I grew up. So I knew I liked you. I just couldn't figure out the connection. And now I figured
place
it out.
that has barbacoa 7 days a week is a place that you should all go to. Because here and all over the rest of Texas, it's on Saturday and Sundays. It's the primary time you're going to find barbacoa.
Shout out to El Paso. Noemi, I'd love to hear an introduction to yourself and kind of get the audience some exposure to you. On a side note, Noemi was part of our first series of leaders that we've interviewed. And so be on the lookout for that podcast. It's going to be coming out soon. But yeah, why don't you do an intro to yourself?
Thanks, Alfonso. I'm Noemi Cherras Velasco. I was born and raised in Ecuador, a little city named Manta, like a blanket. And I moved to Mexico City to study my career when I was 19. I graduated from a bachelor degree in international business in the Tecnológico de Monterrey in Mexico City. And how I ended up in this industry that I'm very passionate about was when I started my professional experience was doing the thing I studied for, like trading and importation. And it was about also it is a South African paper industry. So it was moving from paper that is like very obsolete nowadays to technology. I was an inside sale. I was looking at people that doing the business, like the sales manager was like, I want to be in the sales area. And I looked for, now that we're talking about opportunities that I think we'll get deep on that, is I found the job application through the university that I studied, and I found Alestra. That is the first company I joined, and that opened the door for me to this world. And I learned about the IT and telecom business. And after that, I moved to the data center industry, always in the sales field. And I got a lot of support from my former bosses to understand. I didn't study engineering, so I was learning all the technicalities and the scope about a data center and the solutions. And after being for many years in this industry, in this sales area, and selling these products, because data center is a product, and I made this connection with people, and my current boss was my customer in the past. So he invited me to join his team here in the U.S. Now I'm based in Austin, Texas, and I'm a business developer manager in in this tech company, and I support and lead the expansions in the Latin region, specifically for Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil. So I've been growing in this path and the tech area, and I'm happy to be here with you all, and looking forward.
That's such a cool region to be managing too.
Yeah,
It's like such an exciting area of growth to be part of, and you're in Austin.
Absolutely.
It's a big area of growth too.
Yeah, the biggest, and in Latin America.
So we're going to continue to grow too.
Yes.
All right. Why don't you kind of give us an introduction about yourself, my friend?
Yeah. I wish I could say my path was a lot more narrow, right? I've had an interesting path. So my name is David Isaac. I am the co-founder of DCAC, which is Data Center Anti-Conference. I'm also the vice president of strategy at Overwatch. I'm from the Valley, El Valle, for those that do recognize it. Yeah, so it's small town, border town, about 20 minutes away from the border. It's been an interesting path, right? I kind of fell upon the data center industry, and really, I'll get to that story. But a little back about my past and how I ended up here was, I used to work in the fields. Much like all of y'all, I was trying to figure out how I made the most money. I've always kind of said I've been an entrepreneur since I was younger. And so here I am in middle school. My best friend's dad owned a produce company, and I'm trying to figure out what job I want to do. No one would hire me at 15 years old. So I'm like, all right, well, I happen to throw it out to him. I'm like, hey man, like, is there anything I could do to make some money with you? He's like, yeah, sure enough, you can come work with me in the bodegas, packing watermelon. So I'd pack watermelon. I'm like, okay, awesome. So I did that when I was 15 years old. Next summer I come around and I'm like, hey man, how do I make more money? He's like, oh, you can go out in the fields. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So I'm out there working in 110 degrees weather, 2 shirts on, right? It's pretty rough job. There was, so I did that every summer, just kept trying to figure out how I kept making more money, right? And that's how I paid for my school. I paid for all the clothing, everything else that I needed for the year. There was one summer that I remember realizing, like, it was so hot, and I remember being so exhausted that I realized, like, I told myself, I go, man, there has to be more in life. There's no way I can do this the rest of my life. I thought, it's great money. They pay me in cash, I'm making a good living, right? It was great while I was young. And that one day in particular, I remember it clearly. I was like, man, I got to get a job. I got to get something different, right? So mind you, at this point, I hadn't been thinking about school. I hadn't been thinking about college. I thought college wasn't for me. Luckily, along the path, I've had some great people that believed in me. One of them being my counselor, and he kept pushing me to apply for college. He's like, hey, apply for college. So I applied for college, applied for, 20 different colleges all across the U.S., not knowing anything about colleges. Again, I hadn't been taught, how to even look for college, which college I should go to, what I should study. Still didn't know what I wanted to do. I figured, well, I'll show up and I'll figure it out along the way. So I applied for university, St. Edward's University out here in Austin, Texas, and I got into what's called the CAMP program, right? The CAMP program helps specifically migrant students. So they, I was able to get a scholarship through them. And the first day I had ever seen the university was the first day I showed up. So I'm just, I was like, I had fully left it up to faith. Wherever they offer me the most money, I'll go there. Showed up in Austin, Texas. Had been there a couple of years, and one of my best friends in college, he was working for Kirk, who all of y'all are aware of. He was working for him, and at the time, I guess he was looking to move up the ladder, and he's like, hey, I need someone to backfill and help out with business operations. He's like, you think you can help us out? I'm like, sure. What does it pay? I think at the time was, I don't know, $15 an hour. And I'm like, hey, sign me up. I'm a college student. I needed some extra money. I'll do anything I can to, make an extra dollar, right? So, and that's, so I started working for Nova Mission Critical, which is a general contractor based out of Nyack, New York. That's where I met Anthony, Jesse, and a few, Kirk, and a few other folks along the way. That was kind of my first introduction to the industry, which is pretty awesome. Went from business operations to business development to helping out with proposals. So it kind of grew along the way. Went on to work for IES as a program manager, where, I managed 8 different sites, kind of helping out with their programs on site, just, finding any issues that we can help improve on. One of the things I heard about was from Jose in the last call was, talking about working with Latinos. These projects had a lot of Latinos on them. And one of the things was awesome to be able to show up to the site and connect with them. They would open up so much seeing another Latino, and because I would talk to them in Spanish, right? They loved that. They loved the fact that I was there and I was just trying to be myself. So I'd find a lot of things that we can improve on just by organically talking with them in Spanish, and they felt like they could trust me. So it was awesome. It was a great program. But talking about the culture, they put any barriers aside, and we'd figure out the problems together. From there, kind of we're still running DCAC along the way. I remember this one day in particular that Anthony, Jesse, and Kirk had mentioned they were going to start up Overwatch. So kind of talked to, joined them, came on as a project manager, went ahead and ran a few projects along the way. Great experience there. And well, here I am today. So it's kind of again, talking about 30 years of the path. Mm-hmm. So,
I'm curious just with the success of DCAC, did you know when you started it would turn into what it has today? I feel like this year was your 7th in person, 8th year. I think you canceled a year, but 7th in person. Did you know kind of like it would turn into what it has today?
No, absolutely not. It was just something that, when we started DCAC, Kirk and I kind of talked about it, was the biggest thing we wanted to do is make a difference, right? And I think we've done that. We talked about it that DCAC can go away tomorrow. And as long as we felt like we made a difference, then we've done our job, right? To challenge the industry, to push the industry forward. But no, it's been a blessing in disguise, and, look forward to seeing it continuously grow. But did not expect it.
I'm excited for you to be one of our founders for the reason that a lot of what you guys did there is we're trying to do it here. And so I'm hoping we have the same successes. In the first part of the podcast earlier, we spent some time asking some of the founders their why. Really trying to digest, what was it about that we're trying to do that's special or important to you? And I'm curious, Noemi, I'll start with you. How would you tell that story? Like if somebody were to say, Noemi, like why that organization? Why is it special to you? And what are the key things that you'd want to share with people?
I think I have it easier because I'm a woman, and so I want to be the representation in this field. So I decided this is a great opportunity. I've heard the pillars and our mission, and I think I can be part and share what my insights are and what the path I've walked and paved, and to be the person I am now, the professional. And I love all the people we have here, the founders. We are sharing every different perspective, but every comes together to one main goal, that is helping others. Like we can replicate from some other cultures that they help each other and they build empires and they are growing their communities in different countries. And also here, but thinking about what we can do in our countries. Like, for example, in my case, Ecuador. Like we have a lot of talented people there, but they don't need to go out to actually be part of this amazing industry and be part of the future, because we know that data center is part of a daily activity, go in and out every time we use an application in our cell phones. So that's why I wanted to be the voice in this case for the women and for young people, from people that is in small countries like Ecuador. Like you don't expect like, oh yeah, probably I will end up working in the US for this big tech company and thinking, well, I didn't even study engineer. But as the other founder, Alex, mentioned, like we have a lot of positions, and the data center is a world that you can start working from business to legal, finance, and build this entire career on your own, and having people that can lift you up to be a great professional.
Awesome. Thank you, Naomi. I'm curious to ask you, Anthony, that same question. Because I think
not be easy for you.
he's usually pretty passionate about it, and so like he was one of the, and I'll get into the kind of how this started, because you were one of the. I still remember us having a conversation in Starbucks in Midlothian, Texas, when this kind of all got originated. But I'm kind of first, kind of just stay with the topic here. Kind of give everybody the why for you.
For me, I can think back to sitting in my apartment in the fall of 2017 in Seattle, Washington. And I had just relocated up there for what I felt was like my first big boy job. Like I'd finally arrived at a job. I still have that check on my wall of a reminder. And it was when I worked for Oracle Cloud, and thought, I figured it all out. I'm so smart. I'm like, I got it all figured out. And I'm sitting there reading this book one day. It's Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers. And something maybe midway through, I got to a certain point and I realized I didn't do anything. Everything about the success of my life is because this person introduced me to this opportunity. This person introduced me to this opportunity. And for that second, I had this epiphany in my head where I was like, I got to tell people. I'm sitting there by myself reading, of course, but I felt engaged at that moment. And like, it was humbling to think so much of my time was spent, look what I accomplished. Look what I had to go through. And I did this. And then it was like, wait, Kirk introduced me to this person. This person introduced me to this person. And that's the whole path of my life. And from that point forward, I got really engaged in the veteran community in the Seattle area, because I was like, I want to help other people like me. And I want to tell them what I just learned, that it's not you that's going to do these things. You're going to go engage with people and you're going to show them who you are, and others are going to show you the path. And for me, that's my why. And that I got to see a lot of success. And you mentioned other communities and how they're organized. I got to see that in the veteran side, and that it took me all across the country. It took me talking to high schools of like 1,000 high schoolers at a time, which was a little intimidating at first, of getting in front of 1,000 kids to tell them why I think these things are important. But I got to do all that. And I feel like I was just a lone person, just like saying yes to everything I encountered. It was like, hey, would you go talk to this? I was, yes. Hey, would you go to this other thing? I was, yes. And so I just felt like that's the only thing I would say and it just took me all over the place. And then I moved away from Seattle, get back to Texas. We start a business and you just lose track of the community. You lose track of the things that you used to help people with. And when you were talking about it on your podcast, you said something and I didn't even know you at the time. And I was just like, I was getting ready to write you this long message. Like, how do you know this guy? He's going to think I'm crazy. I was like, I put a pin in it though. But you had that call to action of like, you believed the same thing I believed about veterans, and that all we need to do is just share the story. And that's all I felt like I was doing in the veteran community. I was just literally saying, hey, I'm a dumb infantry guy. This is how I got to construction. And this is how I got to technology. I met this person. I studied this on my own. I did this. And it was a path. So for me, the why is I want to show people the path. Personally, I'd like to go into the small towns of South Texas, Southern Arizona, and Southern California, a lot of the areas that I grew up. And I'd like to go to those small high schools and tell them, hey, this is who I am. This is the success I've had. And it's not me. It's like this person, and start teaching it from very early on that we get to the places successfully together. And if you're in it for yourself, I mean, you'll only get so far, and you probably maybe get some success, but you're going to get miserable at a certain point, and it's just going to stop growing for you. And then you'll be in your 40s and you'll be like, what am I doing with my life? So for me, that's my why. We'll do a lot of cool things, but showing the path to others is my why.
Fantastic. I mean, that's a really good why. I had to say, David, I'm kind of curious to end with you here. You've heard just about every other founder, so you probably have the toughest job here to give us your why, my friend, but kind of give it a go.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, right? Communicating that, I'll do the best I can. But I think, my why is introducing Latinos to this industry. I feel, just much like you all mentioned in the earlier podcast, that we're all aware of labor shortage that's coming, right? And we're tapping into the veteran community right now with Overwatch. I think one of the things that I think that Latinos could bring to the table is their work ethic, right? The customer service and work ethic. I mean, at least in the Valley, I mean, I noticed that a lot of people put, the customer service first, which I love, right? And I think that same experience, how hard they're willing to work, if they're just given the right opportunity, they will succeed, right? Someone gave me that opportunity. I don't deserve to be where I'm at, and I appreciate every moment. I'm blessed. But I think that, I'd like to be able to have someone else experience the same thing that I experienced. So I think that's my why.
Those are fantastic whys. Anthony, I want to divert here just for a second and really kind of explain for those that are listening kind of how this came about. And so, if I try to remember my portion of the story, and I'm kind of curious to kind of hear from your perspective, started for me in doing a podcast with Kirk. And kind of really putting it out there for the first time that I kind of had this vision and this goal of eventually starting the Lighthouse. Like I had a name. It's about what I had. I had an idea of content. But that was the first time I ever vocalized it and verbalized it. And then fast forward to you coming into Midlothian, and we went and had just a business lunch, kind of get to know each other a little bit better and meet each other. And I think you brought it up and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something." And then the idea of this concept came up. So I'm kind of curious, like, what were you kind of thinking? What was kind of your idea there in really putting this together?
Yeah. Well, going back to what I was explaining about Seattle, I got exposed to a group there, and for life of me, I can't recall their name, but it was a small group, and they all worked for Microsoft. And they created this platform, which at the time was very novel. They were just using Zoom. Now it's like everyone uses Zoom. But it was like, hey, all we do, and at the time I ran this Oracle Latin Alliance group, which there was no one running it. I wanted to do it. I also did veteran things. So I was like, yeah, let's do this too. I want to try to get involved with this community. And so I met these guys, and they're like, hey, we need Spanish-speaking software developers. Because what we do is we put them on Zooms to high schools and middle schools across Mexico. She was like, we partner with these schools in different areas of Mexico, and all we need is you to find Spanish-speaking engineers. And I was like, that's awesome. It's like, you're not even traveling. You could just literally pop in and the auditorium is there. And so I went and found a friend, Mark Sanchez, that I worked with at Oracle, and he was not a software developer, but he spoke Spanish and he got into construction and into tech. And so I'd saw that success before. And then I moved away from Seattle. I mentioned I lost track of all that community. So when you mentioned it, it was like the pairing up of, I've seen this work before. Like, I've seen this be wildly impactful. And there was only a handful of them. Like, the only people I ever talked to from the organization, maybe 3 primary people, and they had like 2 support. So it was just a small group of people that said, I want to do something. I want to make an impact. So pairing that with yours, that's what I saw. I was like, these guys proved it. They did it with the 5 of them. They touched thousands of people across that country. We can do it too. And so that's what the Lego blocks went together at that point. And I needed to follow up with you. I needed to find out, like, is this something that can I help you with this? I want to bring this to life. So does that explain?
No, it actually explains it. I'm kind of curious just to explain the why and the how. I think for me, the moment that I realized, like, this platform and this sharing of space is super important is I remember at waiting to go talk at DCAC this past year. And that was the first time I met Alex. And we're in the back, and he had just, he was sharing the story about how he had just became a naturalized citizen, and kind of like, was kind of downplaying it. Like, oh, you just got back, no big deal. And it kind of like clicked in my head, and I told the story for the first time to anybody where I became a naturalized citizen. And when I did, it was like a normal day for me. I didn't tell a single person. I left work, went to my ceremony, came back, went back to work, and nobody knew other than my wife. That was the extent of what I shared. And at the time, the topic of immigration, the topic of visa or your status, it's a subject that's difficult for people to talk about. And I noticed that downplaying of Alex, and I made it a point to, like, I think I even said it, like, no, cabrón, this is a big deal. And so I shared it with those, and I asked him if he was comfortable with me sharing it, and he kind of looked at me and was like, yeah, I think so. Like, okay. So I shared it with those that were going to do the panel with us. I think it was you, Anthony, and Jose. And like, it was a very positive, like, man, that's awesome, dude. You should be proud of this. This is a big deal for you and your family, and what it means just across the board. And in that moment, like, you realize that there's a lot of these topics that require vulnerability. And a lot of times you kind of have this thought of, like, nobody is going to understand why I think the way that I think. And so you just put them somewhere deep inside where you just don't want to talk about them. And so the more you are around people that you think relate and understand, like, I think there's power in vulnerability, and I think connection. And I think I said it earlier, like, this business is 80% people. Like, all of us have gotten a job or have gotten an opportunity. Yes, like, doing good work and being good at what you do, it's really just the ticket to admission. It's the network and the relationships that you have that set you aside. And so for us in this opportunity, this is exciting.
Well, you said something there I wanted to make sure we covered. When we think about, like, the genesis of why we came together, I mean, it really started with the panel of, let's just talk.
Yeah.
And then it was like, we have very similar, across the country, located, one born in Mexico, one born, like, there were so many similarities. And I don't think any of us expected to feel that. It's like, oh, let's go talk about this stuff. And it's always about work. It's always about recruiting. It's always about these other things. There was a personal thing there that it's like, we got to do more. We can't have just had this great conversation, had great feedback from the audience, and had people shake our hands and say, this is a great topic, and then just leave it.
It was crazy for me to hear from y'all, because I needed to leave pretty shortly after the panel. So I didn't get a chance to stick around. But it was really cool to hear from, I think, Jose, Alex, I think you, Anthony, had several people in the audience come to them and almost like, hey, this is, how do I get involved? This is awesome. Like, I've never seen a topic like this being discussed openly. And so that for me was kind of like hey, there's something here that we need to provide a platform for us to get involved.
Yeah.
You know, I'll kind of switch gears. So we talked about the why. We did the intro. I'd love to kind of get into the pillars a little bit. So I'm kind of curious. There's 3 main pillars, and we'll start with mentorship. And I know, Anthony, this is a super important topic to you. So I'm kind of curious to kind of give, your vision of what OlaData is going to do for the community, for the professionals, for the companies when it comes to mentorship, and kind of what we're looking to do there.
Yeah. Well, when we think about mentorship, I know I shared something before. All the mentors in my life didn't know that they're my mentors. It was just like I saw someone that was like, they're special. I want to be around them more. And those are the ones that I take things from. Of like, this is how this is how she engages this way. And those are like the little things I put in my tool chest. So when we think about telling others, like, that's so impactful. You can't do this by yourself. I literally started saying my why. The problem with that is, how do you pair that up? Like, how do you as an individual go find someone who's a mentor and not just be an awkward experience of like, hey, can I come talk to you for once a month for a year? It's an awkward situation there. So I think the opportunity here with mentorship is to be very intentional about it. And that we want to provide a mechanism that if you want to support this community, you're going to sign up on our website. We're going to aggregate your information. We're going to take some of your competencies. And then if you want to be mentored, we're going to have a spot for mentees. And that could be a student, a college student trying to figure things out. That could be a young professional. That could be someone even further in the career that just wants to learn about this space. Those are the 2 areas that we're going to say, sign up, we're going to pair you. We're going to make this an intentional exercise now that folks in this community will have access to a mentor, and folks who want to grow themselves. I mean, frankly, I'm sure we all can attest to this. It's not until you try to teach someone something, you realize how little you know about it. And then when you try to keep doing it and you try to explain to someone why you do things as a professional, it makes you really ask yourself, well, do I want to give this advice? Like, do I really believe that? So being a mentor is an opportunity for any professional who maybe have made it and found success to go learn something new about themselves and then go change someone's life. Because things as simple as, how do I apply for a job? How do I negotiate an offer? What are career sectors in the first place? Very basic things that I know I learned through Google and Yahoo and other things and trial and error and going about it. That's the biggest opportunity we have at the mentorship program. So that'll be one of the first things that we start, and that'll be one of the first things to start looking out for on the website.
Awesome. I think when we expand on our pillars, the next opportunity for us is really understanding the educational space. And I'm curious, David, kind of walking us through kind of what you see us doing when it comes to partnering with the education sector, and really how does Hola Data fit into that when you think of that pillar?
I think it starts with getting in touch with the, Alejandro said this in the last podcast, as speed of market, right? How do we get the current generation, up to speed to be able to replace today's generation, right? And to me, that kind of hit home. I think about it as, we got to get active right now with touching on high schools, right? Not at the college level. Let's start a little earlier. I mean, in middle school too, introducing what a data center is. I mean, the big thing is during high school, as you're exiting high school into your college career, or just trying to figure out your next steps in life, that's when you're kind of figuring out what it is you want to do. And the faster or the sooner that we can educate the youth on what a data center is, the opportunities that you have, whether it's finance, whether it's operations, construction, right? It introduces them to a whole different mindset. But letting them know that there's an industry out there that's in need of people, right? That they can, go in any direction that they want. And it's only going to continue to grow. I think, that would at least put us in the right direction. I think that's what we're doing here. I mean, I think everyone's so passionate about helping the youth, helping Latinos, right? That's going to be one of the things that, we'll be able to focus on to really help make an impact and drive more people into this industry. I think it's one of the main things that I think we're really going to bring out through OlaData.
You know, that's amazing. And I think the last pillar, and I'd love, Noemi, for you to kind of walk us through, you know, we think of both when you look at education and when you look at mentorship, there's then opportunity, which I feel like is at the end of the day, that's the so what, right? And so I'm kind of curious to kind of expand on when you think of the opportunity pillar, what are the things that come to mind that OlaData is going to hopefully provide our members?
Yeah, more about the job placement and internship programs, and partnered up with companies that can start like receiving these young people to start developing their careers, their skills. And it's more about understanding what the capabilities of these young generations are, so we can develop them and helping them. Also more about the networking events that we know in this industry, just to promote them and try to bring more the educational institutions to be part of this, and for the students to understand what is the data center industry, what they can be part of, and also connecting with people. That is the main opportunity that Anthony was talking about. Like we're not alone. We are not here because we are like super smart or genius. No, we are here because we connected to people, and the networking part is very important to get that opportunity, that one lifetime opportunity that many of us already spoke about it.
Yeah, it's such a powerful comment. I mean, I remember being in a panel discussion, listening to a panel discussion, and the person that was talking asked the audience, like, can everybody close their eyes? And everybody did. And he says, you know, I want everybody to raise their hand if you've gotten a job or an opportunity or sold business because of somebody you knew, and raise your hand. And then so they did. And then he kind of said, everybody, please open your eyes. Literally, not one single person in the room had their hands down. Wow. So it just kind of shares the importance of like networking. Like it really, I think the immature young Alfonso didn't realize how important that was. And I was like, my mentors have always shared, like, this is a people business and it's so important. You know, I'm kind of curious. So we've talked a little bit about the why. We've talked about the pillars. I'm kind of curious, like from a call to action perspective, if you're, you know, looking, if the audience you're listening, whether you're a young professional thinking of joining OlaData, or perhaps you can, you're in a position that can maybe sign up your company to be a sponsor company for OlaData. What would be your call to action there? And I'm curious to start with you, David, on like what would your message be to either the professionals or the companies out there that are thinking of joining our organization?
Yeah, no, the biggest thing I'd recommend, I mean, something you were just talking about from a mentorship and networking perspective, right? I mean, going back to thinking about it, like when I was in high school, I didn't know what networking meant. I didn't know how to utilize your network. I knew, okay, hey, I can go meet Alfonso, right? And then that was it, right? There was no follow-up. There was no intentional type of, hey, Alfonso, can you connect me to this person, right? So I think that I'd recommend any young professional that's even slightly interested in this industry to just reach out, you know, just get connected, right? All of us here are willing to help, you know, extend an arm, jump on a call, mentor, you know, the next person in line, right? So I'd say that's all it takes. Sometimes it's just that border, right, where you're scared, you don't know enough. There's some reason that in your head that I'm not good enough, or there's doubt. Put all that aside and just reach out, right? One of us will reach out and one of us will connect with you. To any company that wants to get involved, you know, same thing, reach out to us. We'll find the right opportunity. That, you know, every company has different pillars that they're, you know, they care and they're passionate about. We have so many opportunities that are coming that we're going to do with OlaData, and you know, we'd love to support that support. You know, we need that support to be able to continue to grow this.
Awesome. You know, I'm curious, Anthony, to kind of skip over to you for a sec, and if you were to kind of give us your best elevator speech to why joining this organization, whether you're an individual or a company.
Yeah. Well, when we think about it, we're focused on three different sectors here, three different types of folks. We're looking at companies who want to be part of this mission. So as a company, why would you sponsor? Why would you donate to an organization like this? Because we're not about talk, we're going to do things. And sometimes we're not going to be able to do the largest effort, but we're just going to start. We've already identified our first mentors, our first mentees, the first professionals that we want to take who are very junior in their career and say, hey, this incubation program we're going to do, we're going to start with one. We're not going to wait until everything's set up. So from a company, you should support us because we're putting this to action immediately. And we look to provide results monthly and quarterly as we go along, because why else do it if we can't make an impact? If you're a professional and you want to be part of the association, it's to not just to give back, but to learn something new about yourself by trying to communicate what's been so special to you onto them. So from a professional standpoint, I want people to say, hey, this is an opportunity to get involved immediately. If you don't want to get involved, you don't want to be called or be part of this, and maybe not so much. But other groups will allow you to join that membership, and you might get a newsletter, you might get something. You're going to get active communication from the individuals in this organization because we want your input. We want to see the people who want to make an impact. And if you're a member, a young professional, a college student, why join? Saving 8 years of your life. I mean, you could go the first 4 years of your career and not learn this. I know none of us did. So I'm saying if you're someone who wants to come learn from us, you're going to save yourself 10 years. And we're going to be intentional about it. And then if you join, we're going to call you. We're going to tell you about the call that you need to be on because we want you to first get exposed to these conversations. You bring up such an incredible point in that how many people go to college like, I want to be sales. What degree is sales? That is a significant part of our entire industry. And nobody really thinks about that in college. And if anything, it's looked at negatively of like, car salesman, what is this going to be? It's like, no, sales, selling, you could sell all kinds of things. So those are the three areas. If you're a company, be part of something that's real and it's going to drive action. If you're a professional, learn things about yourself and make a real impact. And if you're a member, save yourself 5 years and then bring that back to your friends. Bring that back to your brother, your sister. Hell, maybe even your parents could use some opportunities because who else except, the people who have gone through so much can really share this. That's my call to action.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony. That was powerful. Noemi, if you had to kind of give somebody the spiel, you're trying to talk them into joining, what would you say?
That if you believe in this mission, is be part of it will be a great impact for many, like the Latino community and many other people. So it's just help us to build this great mission and plan that we have. And as Anthony and David said, like it's going to be put in the road very fast, and every dollar that you donate will be invested very well. So you will see the results, and also you will help us to grow the opportunities for the Latino and Hispanic community in the tech business.
Awesome. Fantastic. The one thing that comes to mind, and I'll throw it out there for those that are listening. If you're a leader in the space today and you want a platform to share your voice, tell your story, maybe be a little bit vulnerable, because I think everybody up here has been a little bit vulnerable in just sharing their experiences. Please reach out. These are the actual stories and the experiences that we're looking to do. And really, when you look at Hola Data and our platform, the Lighthouse, is to really provide that platform and for the share. So if you're listening and you're like, man, I'd love to get involved or I'd love to share my story, reach out. You know how to find us. We're on LinkedIn. You have our contact data. As we look at wrapping up for today, I'm kind of curious, what haven't we hit that you think is important that the people out there listening know about Hola Data that you think is important to resonate? David, I'll start with you. Is there anything that we haven't hit on as we've talked here for the last hour or so?
It's a good question. Here we touched on a lot of different things. I mean, it's hard to be able to describe the magnitude of what we're trying to do here, right? And I think it's exciting. The thing I want to tie back to is just reach out, get involved, get connected with us, right? There's some amazing things that we're working on and we're going to continue to work on. And we need all the help we can get to help change people's lives, right?
Fantastic. I'll give you the same opportunity. Is there anything here that we haven't hit on that you think it's important to kind of comment on?
Well, just summarizing that this will help you, like Anthony said, to save you 5 years. Like you don't know what to do, how to start. And for me also is at that time I wanted how can I make money? How can I produce by myself? And this is a great industry to start, and it will continue growing. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Noemi. And I'm curious, Anthony, if you kind of wrap us up, what haven't we said that you think is important for the audience to hear?
I didn't think about it until you said your last statement that the stories that we're going to aggregate, the leaders across the industry, it's going to be gold because that is the whole thing that ties it together. We're going to talk about why network is important, why getting relatable school and training is important, why mentorship is important. But the people that we're going to put up here are the ones that lived it in action. They had to do all those things in order to get where they're at. So what we didn't talk about is what's about to come. The series that will lead us into the future of incredible leaders, Hispanic and Latin leaders across the industry, or even those that are just allies of us. Like those are what's going to be the thing to listen to send that to your friends, to send it back to your college, to send it back to someone who's like, hey, I heard of this organization. I forget who said it earlier, but the workers on site, we now have a way to talk to the workers on site to say, hey, a lot of us were you. I used to be a laborer, my first job at 18, tying rebar in a concrete firm, a concrete construction group. And I remember doing that 16 hours a day, and I thought I was making fantastic money. And it led me where I'm at today. So those people, at that level, I want to be able to say, listen to this, push it down. We'll hit the superintendent, we'll hit the project manager. Like, this is something to share with your workers. So we'll figure out the whole subtitle piece and we get our Spanish version in there.
No,
but that's why I feel like we didn't really get a chance to talk about it too much.
Anthony, I think if I were to kind of figure that out for me, and you hit the nail on the head, I think about what my so what is, and it is to the thought of my high school playing the podcast. Like, I think of the one that we just recorded with Noemi and Madeline, like, for the young Latinas in that room that are in high school that don't know a path to get out of maybe the situations that they're in. Maybe they're first generation college. They don't have family that have gone to college, nor do they have Latina women that are like, oh, well, they look like me. They've had the path. For them to be able to sit there and listen and hear like, oh, wow, there is a path. That's how did they get there? Same thing as we interview future leaders for just people where I grew up to kind of listen to the podcast and kind of resonate to these leaders that we're going to interview. Mm-hmm. That's deep for me. Like, that's hits home. That's one of those. So like at the end of the day, if we accomplish nothing other than record a couple of really cool podcasts with some inspirational leaders and be able to impact my community, like I've hit the nail on the head. But I think leaving that as the goal, well, everything else will just kind of fall into place because it has already. And so, okay, well, I just want to say thank you for coming and spending the afternoon with us and providing a commercial for what's to come. And I'm looking forward to the future of Hola Data and the podcast. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.